Good morning. Happy Monday. Today I'm going to talk about three heroes of the book of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Most famous for their experience of being thrown into the fiery furnace, something which didn't happen to Daniel, but it happened to them. But it's interesting to think before the chapter 3 of Daniel, the last verse of chapter 2 says, Daniel made request of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel remained at the king's court. So these three friends of Daniel, who had been taken into captivity at the same time as he did, they were young men living in an occupied territory with an alien king and an alien worship system around them. And so when we get to chapter 3, and Nebuchadnezzar builds this image, makes this image of gold, massive image of gold, and commands that people worship it. And if they don't worship it, they will be thrown into the fiery furnace. These three men, and Daniel, of course, they knew they had to make a decision. And they made the decision long before the king was confronted with the fact that they had not done what they were told. They had not bowed down and worshipped the image of himself. I think it was an image of himself, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually say what the image was of, but it was of a god anyway. It was to be worshipped. And everyone did it. Everyone fell down and worshipped the golden image, except these three. And their enemies came to the king and said, "Do you know that these three prominent men that you have appointed, they disobey you?" And he was angry. It says in verse 13 of chapter 3, and Nebuchadnezzar in furious rage commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. And when they were brought before him, he asked them, "Is it true that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I've set up? Now, if you're ready to do it, when you hear all the music start playing, fall down and worship and everything will be all right. But if not, you'll be thrown into the burning fiery furnace. And who is the God that will deliver you out of my hands?" And verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you've set up." They had decided in their own minds, before they were challenged and asked, that whatever happened, they would not bow down to this other god or to the gods of this foreign land in which they were. And this made Nebuchadnezzar more angry. He'd appointed these as officials. He'd promoted them. They were top people. And if top people in his land did not obey him, what would the ordinary people think? He was very angry. So he ordered that the furnace was heated 7 times hotter than it had been before. He made it impossible for them to survive. And he was so angry. And then they were bound and thrown in. And then it tells us this awful thing, that as they were thrown in, the men who had bound them and taken them to the fiery furnace to throw them in died on the threshold because it was so hot. They were burned. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego fell into the burning furnace. And the king saw that they were no longer bound, but they were upright and standing and walking in the midst of the fire, and they weren't hurt. And the appearance of the fourth man is like a son of the gods. And Nebuchadnezzar calls to them and brings them out and acknowledges that their God is a mighty God. This is an amazing story. This is pure miracle, pure supernatural activity of God. And God saved them, and the fire had not even singed their hair. They had no smell of smoke on them. And there had been this fourth one with them, walking with them like the Son of the gods. Jesus came with them. Now, it's an amazing story, an amazing event. God rescuing his faithful people. But the key thing really is that Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego had agreed, had decided. They knew the consequences of their faith. They knew that they, likely or not, would die. And many people have faced that over the years, knowing the consequences of coming to faith. They still turn to the Lord. This is happening all over the world today. Many, many people, particularly in nations where other religions are dominant, in many Buddhist and Hindu nations, and all the Muslim nations, there is severe punishment for people who turn to Jesus. And they know it. They know it when they're exploring, when they're asking questions, when they're coming to faith. They know what the consequences will be, and they have the courage to stand for Jesus. It's amazing. It's amazing. Jesus himself said that anyone who who values his life more, I'm trying to think exactly what he says about how if we lose our lives, we will gain our lives. I can't quite find where that is. But Jesus made it quite clear that we weren't to fear the one who could take our lives, but that we should fear God. What a wonderful example of these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And when you think about the chapter of faith in Hebrews 11, at the end of that chapter, there is the record of many people who suffered terribly for their faith and were not delivered as these three were delivered. But whichever way it goes, it's something we have to decide in our own minds, that we will follow Jesus, whatever the cost, that we will look to God, that we decide in our own minds before we're faced with it, as these three decided before they were faced with it. They knew the consequences. They knew that they would have to stand, and they stood, and God was with them. That's the important thing. God was with them. God was showing the king that he was greater than the king's power. And God is greater than the power of any king around us. And we are on an eternal journey. And we need to keep our eyes focused on the prize that is held up before us of eternal life with Jesus. And we should not be afraid. But here we can read this fantastic story, read the whole of chapter 3 of Daniel. This fantastic story, a story we learned when we were at Sunday school. And how sad that most of the young people of our day have never been to Sunday school, and many of them won't know the stories, these great stories of people of faith who stood for their faith and were delivered by God supernaturally. God is able. God is able to turn your circumstances completely around and to do something that seems impossible in order to help you stand for him wherever you're required to stand and whatever the pressures put against you. These men, full of courage, their words, "If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if it be not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you put up. They were determined that they would not do what they knew they shouldn't do. It takes courage to stand up and not do the things we're being pressurized to do, not to deny our faith. Stand firm, my brother, my sister, stand firm and see the deliverance of your God, because he is well able to deliver you from all the pressures that you're under, and to give you victory, and to demonstrate to the people who oppose you how great he is. Have a good day. God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.